to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and we believe in empowering people through storytelling and education. If you missed last week's episode, Vito and I answered a bunch of questions and shared some exciting news that I'm pregnant. And I'll be sharing a lot more of that journey on Instagram. I'm excited to open up about some stuff that I've gone through and to be able to share with you guys. I do have Hutch and Jovi here with me, so if you hear anything, it is them. But yeah, go back and listen to that. We had some great questions from you guys. So thank you so much for that, for sending those in and for being excited with us on this journey. We're, like I said, really excited to share it with you. Today we have Dominika on the podcast, and I'm super excited to have her on because I've been following her on Instagram for a while, and she has an awesome account called Dog Meets Baby, and it's all about introducing dogs to your kids once you have babies, and setting yourself up for success if you don't have kids yet, and things like that. So I ask her tons of questions. We obviously have a dog and a kid, but I still learn so much from her because I realize we need to do some additional training with Hutch, and that we need to work on a few things. So before the next baby arrives. Are you saying hi? Yeah. So I'm excited for you guys to hear from her. Make sure that you go follow her account because she has tons of great content on there. And she's so much fun to talk to. After the podcast, I showed her some videos of Hutch and Jovi, and she gave me some advice, and it was just really great to have her on. So we're going to dive right into the interview. All right, everybody, I have Dominika here, and I'm super excited to talk with her. You guys know her as the Instagram account of Dog Meets Baby. She's a certified dog trainer, and she helps dog parents safely introduce babies to their dogs. And she has a life with dogs and babies, and she wants to make sure that families who are bringing their kids home, that they understand baby and child safety around dogs, and that you are creating this environment where you kind of all blend together, right? Where you can all be one big happy family. So I'm super excited to talk with her. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So how did you get into all of this?
Into dog training or into Dog Meets Baby?
Well, I would say, a little bit of both. Your training probably led to Dog Meets Baby, but
yes, it did.
Right.
Yes.
So I think more just the family focus of it. Cause I feel like that's something that you don't hear as much of.
Mm-hmm. So I've been a trainer for, 13 years. And I had my kids 5 years ago. I have twins, and my dog is now almost 11. I have a yellow lab. Her name is Lola. And when I had my kids, there were two things that happened. First, my very well socialized, very well trained dog, typical yellow lab, she had a very scary predatory reaction to my kids that I did not see coming. I knew about predatory behaviors in dogs. I never thought that I would see it. As a new mom, my dog lunging at 5-day-old twins, early term babies. And that was an absolutely terrifying experience. It's just something that you cannot forget. Even now talking about it, I can feel it in my stomach. And I can feel my heart beating really fast. And I'm a trainer, and my dog was well prepared. And yes, there were a few things that now, looking back, I knew I would have done differently. And I cannot turn back the time, but I can help other families not to go through this. And that was one of the motivations why I started this podcast. Not this podcast, this was one of the reasons why I started Dog Meets Baby. The other reason was when you have kids, you realize that life of little humans is very different than before you had kids. And you're so tired and you were so sleep deprived. And the trainer who doesn't have kids, they may give you great advice, but this is just not doable. If you run on 2 hours of sleep, and this is like, it's been like for a while now, you're not going to do what they tell you to do. This is just not physically possible. You don't have any mental capacity to do those things that are great, but just so not practical. And it's not something you can understand if you don't have children, but I definitely understood it once I had kids. And I was that mom that was just so tired, and I struggled with postpartum anxiety, and it was just a lot to handle. So that made me realize, well, when you work with parents of young children, you just cannot do it the same way as when you work with someone who doesn't have children and they have all the time in the world to just work with their dog. And then you can have expectations. Here, it has to be different. But there are ways that you can still achieve things, maybe not the same, but it is doable. So
I'm not sure.
Oh, that was another reason why I started Dog Meets Baby.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super interested by it because I was that person that we got a dog and I had all the time in the world for my dog. And especially when I was pregnant, we went on long walks every single day, sometimes twice a day. And he was my pal. Like I worked from home. I was on call at the hospital a couple days, but then like COVID happened. So then I was like just home with him. And so we did everything together. Anywhere that I could take him, I would. And then I had a baby and I told myself that, I'm still going to like make sure I walk Hutch every day. I'm going to make sure that he still feels loved. And finding that balance after having a kid is really, really hard.
It really is.
Like you said, just kind of that sleep deprivation and especially like, if you're dealing with like some postpartum anxiety or depression, like there are days I'm like, I can't get out, I can't leave the house. So I don't know, like how I'm supposed to walk my dog. Or I live in Chicago where it's cold, so it's freezing outside. And I'm like, I don't want to take my newborn baby in 20-degree weather. Whereas when it was just me, I love winter. I'll bundle up, I'll take him out. He loves the snow, but now I have a baby. Like I can't take her. I didn't know how to take her and him both out. So I felt like he started getting neglected, which made me really sad. And then you feel like a bad dog parent. So I feel like I find all of this like really fascinating because I still love my dog. I want him to feel loved. But we have noticed some changes like since having her. So that's why I'm super excited that you're on the podcast, because you noticed you had changes in your dog. So you think, okay, they're going to listen. Everything's really great. Everything's set up. And then you bring a baby home and you're like, wait, this isn't what I thought.
Oh, it definitely isn't. It definitely isn't. And so many parents, I don't think it's something that you can avoid, because if your dog was your first baby, and many of my followers, it's their dog is their first baby. And then you have all these expectations. We're going to continue that friendship and we're going to go still on walks and we're just adding the baby to the mix. And it's not quite like that, right? For lots of reasons. And sometimes you need a longer recovery after giving birth. And it's just, it's a new role. You need to find your new identity a lot of times. And so many parents struggle with guilt and resentment and grief. And sometimes it's they miss their dog. They miss that connection, but they just don't have time. Sometimes you're so touched out that having the dog next to you is you just need space. You just need to be by yourself briefly. And I think it's not something that you can completely avoid. I don't think it's doable because it comes from a place of, I love my dog and I would love to give my dog all of that. But I think it's good to understand that your life has changed and your dog's life has changed. And that's a time when you may not be able to give your dog all of that. And it's good to have a plan. So I always tell parents, just have a plan for the first 3 months. And even maybe you will have energy to walk your dog, but just in case maybe this is the time to find a daycare for your dog, or find a dog walker, or ask a neighbor, or ask someone who wants to help, to have a dedicated person that will help you. It's a simple thing, but it really, it helped me a lot. So I didn't have much help, and I had twins, and I really needed, and my dog was young at that time. Well, she was 5, but she was so full of energy. And having a dog walker that was taking her every day, they were going to the beach, and she had this great social life. And this was happening no matter what. Because as you said, a lot of times you have all the intentions of leaving the house, and it's not going to happen because your kid suddenly has a blowout poop, or it's the weather is not great, or just like by the time you get them ready, they are hungry and now you have to feed them. So it just may not happen that day. But knowing that my dog still had that exercise every day, and she was out of the house and she was coming home and was tired, was really huge for me, because it was just, I felt less guilty. I felt like, okay, I cannot do it, but I outsourced it. And so if, you don't always have to, if it's in your budget, you can pay for it. But I know that especially with COVID, many parents were not comfortable having people over, but those people still wanted to help. So maybe having that person, asking this person to take your dog out, or play fetch in the backyard, or just take, just like do something with your dog, will be actually super helpful.
Yeah. Luckily we did have some people that did help out with that at the beginning, which was really nice. We are going to take a quick break from this episode to talk about one of my favorite new snacks. And since most kids don't love pounding vegetables before they go out to play and run around at recess, you can add great tasting, high fiber superfood chips and bread made from Uprising into your kids' lunchbox. Uprising's mission is to liberate us all from the fundamentally broken food system that is stealing our health. They have cracked the code on healthy bread. You simply can't find this healthy, that tastes this good, and that's this fresh anywhere else. They cover paleo to clean keto to simple low carb, high fiber, dairy-free to grain-free lifestyle. And they are amazing. Uprising has made prebiotic fiber delicious with their patent-pending breakthrough in psyllium husk activation, making fantastic digestive health absurdly easy for all of us. One thing that I have really been loving is their chips. I've had so many different pregnancy cravings, and it's been hard trying to make some healthy choices. And I've been craving something salty. So their Superfood Chips have been amazing because I can enjoy them completely guilt-free and know that I'm getting some nutrition. And I especially love the sea salt ones. They are super addicting and so delicious. And they're baked with superfood ingredients. So they have almonds, MCT oil, apple cider vinegar, egg white, psyllium husk, olive oil. And so a lot of times with healthy food, it's like hard to find things that actually taste good. And these do. They have nailed the taste factor on both their sourdough-esque cubes and the crunch factor on their newly launched Freedom Chips. Uprising is offering our listeners $10 off the starter bundle that includes 2 Superfood cubes and 4-pack of Freedom Chips to try. Go to uprising.com/mamas and the discount will be automatically applied at the checkout. That's UPRISING food.com/mamas to get $10 off your first purchase of the starter bundle, and let me know what your favorite is. Now back to the episode. I'd love for you to share maybe just a few things to steps that people can take. If they're planning on having a baby soon and they have a dog, what are a couple of things that they can do to help prepare their dog for when a baby moves into the house? Like I didn't do tons of preparation, but I remember reading about like taking the stroller on the walk with the dog before the baby got there so that he got used to that. So I remember doing that a little bit. I I feel like that was probably one of the only things we did.
No, and it's not true, because before we started talking here on the podcast, you shared with me that you really work your dog not to jump on people.
Right.
So you really focus on the obedience training and jumping, and that's really what it is about. It's really teaching your dog not to do certain behaviors or do certain behaviors that will be helpful later. So if the more your dog listens to you and knows go to bed or knows not to jump when you carry something, the easier it is later. Life with a well-trained dog is very helpful. So signing your dog up for an obedience class, or working with a trainer, or watching YouTube videos, how to train your dog to do certain things like go to bed or not to jump, is super helpful. Introducing the dog to the equipment, absolutely yes. And some dogs are going to be very easy, almost not notice that there is new equipment. But for some dogs, when you start moving things around the house, or maybe if you move them out of the room that is now the nursery and used to be their room, you need to give them time. So it's good to plan for this. And most people are actually really good about this. Introducing baby sounds. Again, it's not something, and I do recommend introducing newborn sounds, not just babies cry, because it's very different. Many dogs are not going to care, or they're going to adjust very quickly, but it's important that you do it so you know, okay, we cover this. I know my dog is very relaxed when I play a recording of a grunting baby or hungry baby. So this is something that I recommend doing. There are many things like, where is my dog going to ride in the car when I have a baby? Yeah. When you have a big dog and they're loose in the car, and I know many people do it. I definitely did it. My dog was loose in the car, but then I have learned that, first of all, now I have two kids in the back of the car, in the back seat, and I don't really want my dog to be there, and it's not really that safe to have the dog right next to the baby, and they're a projectile, and maybe they should actually wear a harness, or maybe I should have the dog in a crate. So it's not just that the dog might do something to a baby. The dog itself, when it's a big dog, is a risk to the passenger. You never want the dog to fly at a baby. So there are, those are the things. I would say one of the things that I find is a problem later is when the dog cannot be left alone. And it's not so much that they cannot be left alone when everyone leaves. That's of course an issue, but it's usually an issue earlier and people will address it. But when the dog follows you, and when the dog is always with you, you go together to the bathroom, and every time you sit on the couch, the dog just climbs on you. And every time you sit on the floor, they're right in your lap and you keep petting them, and they're just always with you. That can be a problem later. And it might be because you just don't really feel comfortable having this dog next to your baby, because maybe they had a reaction that you didn't like, or that was not what you expected. So let's say the dog is overly excited about the baby and keeps jumping and tries to lick the baby, and it just makes you nervous. Or the dog barked at the baby or lunged at the baby, and then you have to keep the dog away because it's your baby's safety. And when you have a dog that cannot be separated from you, but and they whine and they bark because they want to be you, but at the same time you have to, because it's just not safe, that's when it's a problem. So I always tell people, make sure that you teach your dog some sort of a separation. A simple way to do it is, for dogs that always follow you, make sure that you choose, maybe I'm just going to close the bathroom door and my dog will wait outside. That's where you can start. For some parents, many parents choose the nursery initially, at least. It's like you spend so much time decorating and everything is just so clean and so perfect. And for many dogs, the nursery is like, wow, let's roll here, let's grab a toy, and there is fair later. And many parents don't like to have, they just want this one room to be ready for the baby and not really dirty. So many parents already choose to have the nursery as a dog-free zone. So if you do it, install a baby gate. Every time you spend time in the nursery, your dog can watch you from behind the baby gate. You can give them some treats. You can give them something to chew on this. So they learn, okay, I'm still here. I just don't get to go inside. And if you do it every day or every other day, they will learn it is a predictable situation. You can even put their dog bed there. Mm-hmm. You can move them in the nursery later. This is not it's always easier to move the dog inside the nursery than move them out if there is an issue. So I like to prepare for the worst as if you had to separate, but really we're hoping for the best. The dog is going to be fine. The dog is going to be in the nursery with us. And many times it happens. But if you never separated your dog from the family members, I can guarantee you it's going to be an issue at some point. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I really don't have a good solution for parents when the dog cannot be left alone, but can bite a baby. Mm-hmm. I honestly, there is not a good solution here because at this point, it's often, as we talked earlier, parents don't really have the capacity to really train. Mm-hmm.
Right. No, that's good advice. I mean, we already know like a couple of things that we want to work on with Hutch before the next baby arrives. Mm-hmm. Cause he's gotten really bad at like, since Jovi's eating food, she throws it on the ground, whatever. Yes. So now he begs. Like he used to never whine for food. And now he's like, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like you used to never whine for food. And now he's begging and whining. And we're like, no.
Well, because, they do things that work, right? Mm-hmm. Like if your child gives them food when they whine, it works. And it can take a few repetitions. And with kids, of course, we know it happens really fast. So, and they learn. It's just that's how I get now food. Mm-hmm. And the whining, if you have a dog that is more prone to being vocal, some dogs will whine, some will bark, some will jump. They're hunters and scavengers. Most of them really are into food. So this situation, while it's generally great because it really helps them to see the child in a different light, it also creates many issues where the child finds it funny.
Oh, she loves feeding
you throw it, right? Yeah. Like, so it's just like, and then they don't eat actually, and they're distracted. And then it's like, you have a dog that starts whining and begging for food. And you have a child that probably didn't eat much.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So what do you do? Do you separate now?
Yeah, we have been, or my husband's been working with him, and it's actually been really helpful. Like when we sit down to dinner at night, if Hutch starts whining for Jovi to give him food, he just like goes and puts him behind the gate for like a couple minutes, and then he lets him come back. He puts him in a timeout.
Yes,
basically. And then he doesn't beg anymore. Like he'll just then lay on the floor by the table and like not beg. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of working.
Yeah, timeouts are super effective, and you're doing it right. It's immediate consequences of the behavior, and you keep it short. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you can always separate the dog for a longer time, but then it's not a timeout. Timeout has to be usually it's around a minute.
Yeah, because that's usually what he does.
Because then, this, if you do it longer, then the dog forgets why they're in a timeout. But yes, absolutely. If it works, keep doing it.
Right. All right. We're going to take a quick break to talk about BetterHelp. You guys know I'm a big advocate for taking charge of your mental health, for getting outside counseling. I know it's great to have family and friends, but it's also really important to talk to somebody who's not emotionally attached to your specific situation. And I feel like in motherhood, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of opinions, a lot of outside noise. So being able to talk to a counselor, a licensed professional, at least for me, is so valuable and so important, which is why I love BetterHelp. They have licensed professional counselors who specialize in anger, depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, grief, just so many different topics. And everything you share is always confidential. And the other thing I like about him is that I don't have to leave my house. I've mentioned before, I mean, I've gone to counseling several times, and it's always so awkward going and sitting in an office, like waiting for them to come get you. And you're in there with other people. And it's just really nice to be able to do it from the comfort of my home and to do it in a way that I feel comfortable. I can FaceTime, text, email, not FaceTime, like set up a video chat, depending on whatever I'm feeling, and to set that up and how I feel comfortable. And so many people are using BetterHelp because they're amazing that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. And I want you guys to start living a happier life today. And as a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/mamas. And you can join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mamas. So there's like a few other things that we've noticed that we just want to work on with him. But I mean, I feel very fortunate that they get along so well, and like he loves her, and I feel like they're almost siblings. Like I feel like I have a toddler and a baby. Hutch is like this toddler that I'm always like, no, put that down, no, because he steals her toys.
That is the beauty of having a younger dog that is, you know, like it could be his temperament, it could be the breed, it could be that you really socialize him well. Usually it's a combination of things. And younger dogs, you know, and young kids, yes, they have a lot in common.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and both of them don't know the difference. If it's a stuffed animal, like she doesn't know if it's his or hers, you know, and same with Hutch. It's like a stuffed animal, and he's like, it's a stuffed animal, it's mine. The nice thing is he doesn't chew them and destroy them. He just like steals it and wants you to play. He just comes up with it in his mouth and is like, take this from me so we can play. But neither of them know the difference. So she chews on his chew toys and he's getting her toys. And I find myself getting frustrated sometimes because sometimes it's not a big deal, but then I've noticed like it was just her birthday and she got some nicer toys. And I'm like, he can't play with this. Like, you can't play with this baby. Like, if you destroy this, I'm going to be livid. So then I'm like, okay, I need to start trying to set up some boundaries, trying to distinguish, like, so what I've been trying to do, and tell me if I'm like way off course here. When he brings me one of her stuffed animals, I'm like, no, this isn't yours. Go get one of yours. Cause he knows where his toy basket is. And, then I'll grab like one of his from his basket and replace it. Like, this one's yours. So like trying to just replace, I just haven't been as consistent as I should.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you answered your question. Consistency is really key. Yeah. And if there are no boundaries, if sometimes it's okay and sometimes not okay, it's very, very hard for dogs to really understand what we want them to do. So, but you can always change it. That's the good thing, is that once you decide, okay, I'm ready to address this issue and we're going to do it this way, dogs can definitely learn. And if you're consistent, they will learn faster. Redirecting to his toys, definitely a good strategy. If he knows leave it before he gets to her toy, saying leave it and then redirecting or giving him his toy, you need to make sure that this behavior also doesn't work for him. Because if he gets to play with her toys and let's say he has access to her toys and you're not there to really supervise it and he spends time playing with it, it's working for him. There are no consequences because he just played with it for 30 minutes while you were doing something with the baby, right? So it's like, I would make sure that if you want to address it, he should have access to the toys when you know about this. And other times you don't really give him access. So whether you have the toys in a bin with a lid on it or they're in a special place where he cannot go, so practicing leave it, redirecting. Sometimes it is about, which is a little bit harder at this point, but sometimes some parents do it from the beginning, that they choose. So for those listeners who don't have a child yet, so sometimes you choose that the child is going to have certain type of toys and the dog is not going to have them. So like stuffies, some parents choose that dogs are not going to have them. So there is no confusion later. So you just choose the type of the toy that the child has and the dog has. So they're very different.
Yeah. Yeah. They both have both. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely need to, like you said though, like parenting can be just like exhausting. So sometimes it's like, I just don't even care that you have her stuffed animal right now because I'm tired. Like I can't do this.
I mean, you have to, exactly. You have to choose what matters to you.
Right.
And sometimes, I'm a trainer, so certain things were really hard for me, but I got to a point where I'm like, well, it's okay that she can clean the floor. I know that, I would love my dog to have always in a perfect sit or down stay and never do it unless I tell her it's okay. Right. But I had to accept it that, well, in certain situations, I can let go. Yeah. There are still certain things that I'm absolutely like. My dog is not allowed in my kid's bedroom because my daughter was diagnosed with allergy to dogs, which was quite a shock. But so one of the things that we changed is that she's not allowed in their bedroom. And that's something that I'm super strict about. And she actually never really tries at this point. But, this was something that was very important to me for lots of reasons. And, we were very consistent, right? And because we were so consistent, she actually has learned fairly fast, this is never okay to enter their bedroom. And she just stops. And even if the whole family is inside, she just waits at the threshold and doesn't enter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That made me think of when we were decorating the baby room and putting stuff in there. My dog was like the easiest to potty train. Like we got him when he was like 9 weeks old.
Wow.
No, I lied. He was born in May. He was like 12 weeks old.
Wow.
And when we brought him home, he pooped in the house once. That was it. And then never pooped in the house again. And only peed a couple times because we kept him just on the tile area of the house. And then when we started to introduce the carpet, a couple times he had accidents as a puppy. But after we just worked on him with training, it was like that first week he peed on the carpet a couple times and then never again. Never had any accidents in the house. He was so easy to potty train. I was like, sweet, this is awesome.
Impressive.
When we were decorating the baby room, he peed in her room twice. And I'm like, what? What is happening? Because then I knew it wasn't a potty training issue. It had to have been him being like, okay, you're pregnant. Something's happening, because we've rearranged our house. We've moved around. He's never done that in any other room. And then with her, we started putting her baby stuff in there and getting things ready, and he peed in her room. And I was like, what is happening? Is that just like a dominance thing?
No. I mean, the dominance theory, it's like an old theory that really is not quite true. But it usually how old was he at that time?
He would have been a year old, a little over a year.
A year old. Okay. So definitely and mature, well, not mature. No, he's not. 1 year old is definitely not mature, but not a puppy anymore. Usually those things are a reaction to a change. And, and you had many changes because, you just change things inside the house, you change things in that room, you bring new equipment. Sometimes what triggers it could be that if you had secondhand items, sometimes, we don't really and sometimes, there are certain smells that can trigger it. Especially it can be for dogs, but more so even for cats, where, they can pee on it just because maybe there is a smell of another animal. And it's just usually it's just anxiety. And, the mom being pregnant, that also they can smell the changes in your smell and see the changes in your appearance. And it just happens. If it's very random, very few accidents, I actually have a post about it because it is so common. Peeing when the baby arrives, but some dogs do it later in the pregnancy. Initially when at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I wish I would have trained him to not go in her room, because then a few times we couldn't find him. We're like, where is he? And he kind of shut himself in her room. and she wasn't sleeping in there yet. She was still in our room, but he would like go in there and sniff around and hang out and then pee on something. I'm like,
oh, so that was when she was already home.
I think so. He did it when I was pregnant, and then I think a couple times after we brought her home.
Okay. You know, it's a huge change. Your life has changed, right? Like everything is different suddenly. And to a dog, it's not just a baby. It's the change of his whole life. Suddenly what you used to do at this time of the day,
right? He
doesn't have access to you because you're nursing. And the routines have changed. You used to go, as you said, on long walks. Well, no walk today, just a short walk, like a few short walks for potty, right? And it's like the dog is noticing all those changes and they get less attention. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't want parents to feel guilty. I felt guilty for a long time, but it took me a while to really accept things. Like I try my best. I'm still a good dog mom, and my dog probably has still a really, really good life. And it's not like, she's like locked somewhere and never sees us. She's still a family member. And a lot of times in case of dogs it's the baby, but after the initial shock wears off, it's more so the changes in the communication with the parents. It's the fact they get less attention, the routines have changed. Maybe they were separated and they were never separated, right? Like if you never worked on this, and that's what really makes them anxious. And you have, of course, the baby's cry and the movements and the smells, and there are so many new things. And that's when they respond with that anxious peeing.
Yeah, that makes sense. You had mentioned just kind of like how you kind of feel guilty after having the baby, which I did. But then I also experienced a shorter temper with Hutch. And then I feel guilty about that. Like I've noticed myself like snapping at him quicker. And then I feel bad because I'm like, he's probably not getting as much attention, and I love, if he comes up to me and wants to cuddle, I'm always like, get in here. Like, I love it. I was talking to my husband the other day. I never really feel touched out. I'm a super affectionate person. I feel like maybe with baby number 2, if I have 2 babies hanging on me, I'll probably be like, I need to breathe because I also get claustrophobic. So, but if Hutch ever wants to cuddle, I'm like so excited. Like when he snuggles up, he always sleeps next to me. He's not on the bed. He's in the room, but not on the bed. He'll come and sleep next to me, and I'm like, okay, you still love me. But like, I've noticed, but I noticed like you kind of lose your temper. Like you get angry at your dog. And I've seen like on some of your Instagram polls, like asking people like, you don't like your dog as much after having kids. And you can see that that can be common. But what are some things that we can do to make sure that like, because I still want to be a good dog mom and make sure that he's getting attention and not like lose my temper as much with him.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm not a psychologist or therapist. And I think, that question, I usually collaborate with one because that question is really for them. And what they recommend is like, give yourself grace and know it's a phase. And just maybe if you just spent 5 minutes of quality time with your dog, that's what you can give your dog right now. And other times what you need a lot of time is, the reason why we lose temper with our dog or our spouse is usually because we're just overwhelmed or really tired, right? Like there are like many other reasons for that, for that behavior. Or, if the dog keeps barking and your baby just fell asleep and now you hear them cry again, well, yeah, you're going to be mad because naps rule your life initially. So maybe there are certain things that you can do about it. Okay, if this is a situation that I can control, what could I do about it? Maybe you need to get a white noise machine, or maybe, like if your child really struggles with this one nap, maybe that's the time when your dog really has to be outside the house. And maybe it's just temporary. So there are certain things that you can do something about it, you can control. And otherwise it's many moms, they say that when they were in this situation where they just couldn't stand their dog and they were losing their temper, they really ask someone else to, like, you need to be the person now that gives our dog attention. So usually that was the spouse or the partner. And they step up and they walk the dog more, or they just so the mom gets some room to breathe and find herself again and be more comfortable in this role as a new mom. And just know that it's not forever.
Right.
That this is, it's like, it's just not forever. This is like right now you need to help maybe with the logistics, and maybe you need to just get more sleep, and it's going to change. Your dog still loves you. And when you're ready, start doing some things that you used to love. For some parents, like you said, you really enjoy cuddling with your dog. Right. What helped me is like going for a walk, just me and my dog. Like I just needed to be with her the way, not the kids, because then it changes everything. Like that's when I lose temper, because now I have to think about bottles and diapers and, like we cannot go here. We cannot do this. No, it was just me and my dog. And it was literally like, I remember it was like a 30-minute walk. I still remember that walk. It just really helped me to reconnect with her.
Yeah. I haven't, so I've noticed just for my mental health, taking them both on a walk in the morning is good, that we all get out of the house, we all get fresh air. But my mom's in town right now. And yesterday while Jovi was napping, I took Hutch out by myself, and it was like so nice that it was just us,
Yes.
it was definitely different.
Yeah. I really think it was during the pandemic, because I was the one that was more the default parent.
Yeah.
And when my husband was taking over, it was just me and Lola going for a walk. And it was just so good for our relationship and for my mental health. And it was just like me and Lola time. And it's not like we do stuff together, but, like just walking together and being out in the nature together, or in the city was just amazing.
Yeah, that is really nice. I feel really grateful. Jovi's always slept through his barks, and we have a white noise machine, but even if he was in our room and she was in our room sleeping with the sound machine on and he barked, she's always slept through it. Which is really nice. And there's like some cute things that I love with them too. Like, he knows when she's not supposed to go. We have like a gate and this like pocket door that keeps her out of the area, which is like where our foyer and laundry room and stuff is, and his food and water are there. And if I forget to like shut one of them and she goes through it, he sprints over there and starts like barking. He like tells me, he's like, hey, she's over here. Like, and he immediately goes over to his bowl, and he's not protective of his food. Like if he's eating, she could grab his food. He's not going to bite her. He doesn't growl at her, like nothing like that. But he like lets me know. It's so funny. It's I'm like, oh, thanks, Hutch. I forgot to shut that. Like, thanks for letting me know. But they are really cute together. She does torture him a little bit. Like she likes to pull his tail hair. So he just gets annoyed and like gets up and leaves. So like I'm working with her on like gentle, like, no, you can't do that. You need to be gentle. You need to be gentle. But she's in this phase where she thinks that it's like funny. If you tell her like, no, don't do that, be gentle. She's like, wait a second, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to push my boundaries here. I mean,
it is definitely, it sounds like your dog is very tolerant of handling and in general, very, like really likes being around your daughter. But every dog has, they have limits. And what I always tell, what is it?
I said, I don't blame him when she's pulling his tail hair out.
It's like they can tolerate things until they don't. And I always tell parents, like, even if your dog seems to be tolerant, most likely if you filmed it for me and I looked at the dog's body language and, you already said your dog leaves, right? So that's a very clear sign. I don't like it. Leave me alone. And then probably your dog might be showing more signs of stress when it's happening. So to me, it is very important that I do those quizzes in my stories where I analyze the dog body language when a child is near or does something like pulling the hair. Because a lot of times what we if we don't know what to look for or like look at, we may think it's cute, but a lot of times it really isn't.
Yeah.
And many people are later surprised. My dog seemed fine. Like, why is my dog suddenly growling? Because your dog was communicating for such a long time, and and no one listened, because a lot of times people just don't know. And then suddenly they escalate that communication to something that's really clear, like growling or showing teeth. And it never really comes out of nowhere. So I always say that the phase that you're in is the hardest for many dogs, because you have a young toddler that's very impulsive. Of course, a tail is fun and they're going to grab it because it's like a fun toy that keeps moving. And they're not going to listen to verbal commands. Like, this is just not, like, they're not there developmentally. So you just need to be there physically and really help them not to do this behavior. So you usually, parents at this age, you have to separate more. You have to supervise, because it is really, I get so many emails from parents of young toddlers after something happens. And 99% of those situations, if the parents knew that the dog was unhappy, it could have been avoided. And, it's a very heartbreaking decision after something happens, because now you cannot trust the dog. Usually one parent is really ready to adopt the dog out or rehome. It's just so much harder. So you don't want to go there. And many dogs are very tolerant and they're never going to do anything, but you don't know if your dog is one of those. Right? It's just, and another reason is, like, if people have older dogs, a lot of times they might be in pain. There might be arthritis. So the child trying to climb on a dog, maybe they would have been fine when the dog was 2 years old, but now your dog is 10 and they are a little bit sore, and the child climbing on them, that gives them pain. And now they're trying to avoid this. And that's why they have this reaction. So sometimes, like, I see it with, like, baby number 2 or baby number 3, when the dog is much older, that people are like, my dog was always fine with kids. And suddenly they really don't like baby number 3. And it's just because they are much older. They just, they don't have patience for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was going to ask you, like, what do you tell people when they bring the baby home and their dog just has, like, a horrible reaction? Is there any steps that they can take to try to correct it?
Well, I mean, my whole, I think you can do so much to prepare for that. So I share a lot of, on my Instagram, there's a bringing baby home highlight. So there's, like, many posts. There's so much content that I have a mini course that you can buy, but generally there is, like, if you follow me for a long time, you know what to do. Yeah. There is a lot out there. So to me, it is very important that people know that they should have a plan. And that's when you can avoid this situation, because it can still happen. But if you have a plan, you will be able to intervene sooner. And you're not going to go through what I went through. So, because once it already happens, then, it's very normal that dogs need time to adjust to the baby. And many dogs will whine or bark when the baby cries. That's fairly normal and somewhat expected. Now, if a dog has a very severe reaction, like a very aggressive reaction, then at this point I would separate and talk to a trainer, because a lot of times people trying to do what they think is the right thing to do, they actually can make it worse. So rather than, and you have a 6-7 pound baby, rather than trying to, like, okay, I think by having the dog closer to the baby and keep feeding treats, that should help. That is actually, like, one of the worst ideas that you could do. You need to separate and then go from there. Because if your dog is already attacking your child, staying close and eating treats is not going to help.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you just to tell us more about, like, your website and the resources and courses and everything that people can find and the stuff that you offer.
My website is called dogmeetsbaby.expert, and you can find there a preparation checklist. It's a free preparation checklist when you're expecting or adopting a baby. So you can just see, and the way I like parents to look at this is there will be many things that you can check off right now. Okay, my dog, this is covered. Okay, I know that my dog does great with this. And then there will be probably things that you're like, oh, I haven't thought about it. Okay, let's work on this. So this is what the list is for. When you have a toddler, I have a toddler and dog guidebook. And this is for parents of newly mobile toddlers, of parents of toddlers and preschoolers. So it's, for kids like up to 5, let's say. The paid content is the mini course. In this next month, so it will be October, I will have a preparation course. I do private sessions with clients, but my time is limited and I cannot help everyone. So I decided to film the course. So if someone would like to work with their dog at their pace and watch the videos and practice, now they will have a chance. It's something that parents, I always get emails and questions about it. Like, what can I do? How can I prepare my dog? Do you have something for me? And so far it was just a mini course, which is really only about the introduction phase. So now we'll have more how to introduce the dog.
That's awesome.
How to prepare the dog.
Yeah. I'll include in the show notes the link to your Instagram, your website, and then that checklist as well. I have 2 friends pregnant right now that have dogs that I know one of them's very possessive of her. But since she got married and since she's been pregnant, the dog has been going to her husband. Like usually when they sit on the couch and watch TV, the dog snuggles up to her. And lately the dog's snuggling up to him. And she's like, what is this? Like she's pregnant and now the dog just wants her husband.
Yes. Some dogs, and I know it breaks usually the mom's heart, but some dogs, when the mom is pregnant, either they are glued to her or they want nothing to do with her. Yeah. So normal, very normal.
Yeah. And I think that's important to know too, like what the normal behaviors are and what aren't. And then, being prepared is the best thing that you can do for your dog and your baby so that when they do meet, it's more that smooth transition and then you're not, freaking out and the signs to look for when they're stressed out. Like I know Hutch, like Jovi loves cuddling with him. If he's like laying down, she turns around and backs up into him and sits down. And sometimes he lets her and sometimes he just gets up and walks away. So,
and good to listen. So teach her not to follow him, right? It's really important to tell, like, I like to narrate it for little kids. Oh, you see, I think Hutch doesn't want to cuddle right now. Okay, we're going to play here. And he wants to have his alone time.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I need to make sure I'm like watching his cues. 'Cause he's never like done anything to her, but he usually just gets up and walks away.
Which is a very easy cue for kids to understand.
Right.
And, so for some parents, it could be the ears go back. Some dogs are very expressive of their ears. And for some dogs, it will be the tail is tucked. And for some dogs, they avoid or they leave. So teaching the children, like, I just like to focus on 3, like 3 signs that your dog is uncomfortable. And you just keep saying this. And it really helps later. And at the same time, talking about, oh, Hutch is so happy when you get home. Hutch is so happy to see us. Look, his tail is moving so fast and he's all bouncy and wiggly, because the kids really pay attention to this. They're really good about noticing those little details and they can memorize it. This way, they will know what it means. Yeah. Because one thing that I didn't realize, it's like the last thing that I want to mention, is that if your child has never heard a growl, they are going to think that your dog is smiling because they're showing their teeth. And they really, and that was something that happened to me. We had a dog that suddenly growled and my kids didn't know what it was. And their reaction, which was surprising to me, it was a small dog, so maybe that's why. And it was really surprising to me because they were not afraid of the growl. They thought that dog was smiling.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we stay near a young child and a dog, because they may not interpret the behavior the way we would.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for offering all of this information. Everybody make sure that you go follow Dominika and check out all of her resources that she has. Like I said, I've been following her for a while and I love it because there is a lot of great information just even on her Instagram. And I love the polls, and it's like nice seeing things that come up, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not alone in this, or my dog's not the only one who does this, or I'm not the only one who felt this way. And then now with baby number 2 coming, it's like, okay, like, is there anything else that we need to kind of like try to get nip it in the bud now, before another baby comes? Cause then it's just going to be chaos.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time and energy today.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I'm going to continue to follow along with her and learn from her content and everything that she puts out. If you're listening, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you stay up to date on everything and you catch all the new episodes coming out. And make sure you leave us a review and write in and let me know who you want to hear from, what topics you want to hear, and I will do my best to make that happen. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you next week.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies, and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast